Welcome back. This is episode 227 of the Veterinary Business video show. In this episode we'll learn about the potential for practice growth from better preventive medicine compliance, and we'll hear some advice for young vets looking for that perfect first job. We'll learn the value of staff meetings devoted to client service. We'll hear when it may be time to quit your job, and I'll offer you my quick business tip for this episode. I'm John Sheridan, and this is the video show from Veterinary Business. Prevention is always better than cure, and there will be little argument amongst members of the veterinary profession about the benefits of preventive medicine to enhance animal health and welfare. In small animal practice, the animal health check and vaccination update is also a major component of practice income. And I think we forget sometimes the tangible and measurable benefits in animal health terms of all the other preventive medicine measures we recommend. What happens and who's to blame when clients reject or simply forget that advice? No question in my mind, the problem is always the responsibility of the practice, and the potential benefits in business terms of improving compliance are enormous. Here's a clip in which Dawn Burdett of Henry Schein explains why.
We looked at over 700 practices, and to try to put a dollar amount to what is the revenue opportunity of increasing compliance in preventive care. So we looked at about 700 practices, and we asked the practices, what are your guidelines for preventive care? And they told us, and that was around exams and dentistry and flea and tick and heartworm and nutrition. I don't think I'm forgetting. So those were the areas that we talked to them about it, and then they told us what their guidelines were for their practice. And we went in their data, went into their software and pulled to say, okay, well, how many did you actually do against what you would like to be able to do? And what we found was that in practices grossing about $1.5 million, two doctor practices grossing about $1.5 million, there was almost $3 million of revenue opportunity in non-compliance of preventive care. So there's a tremendous opportunity to increase the health care and increase the revenue of the practice, and at the same time that you're doing that, you're really decreasing long-term costs for your client, because we know that in preventive care, if you catch things early, the treatment outcomes are better and they're usually less expensive. Preventing things is usually better in terms of patient care and cost to the client than treating things if they get it. So everyone wins with preventive care.
Now let's see who's on the video show soapbox. Now for some advice from Cody Krulman, a young man who describes himself as a cow vet in practice in the United States. In this clip, Cody offers some words of wisdom for young vets still looking for that perfect first job after graduation.
So having that self-awareness in terms of what and where you want to be is certainly important. But I think people overthink it. Like, I know your first job seems like the biggest decision that you're ever going to make, but it's not. And I know that I'm kind of calling the kettle black, the pot black. You know what I'm saying. Like, I came out of practice into the current place that I am. So I didn't move around a whole bunch, which is the norm. But I watch this industry like a hawk. I know exactly what's going on. And it is not a big deal if you leave and then leave again. Like, I'm on the other end in terms of hiring veterinarian. We don't discriminate if somebody has been in a spot for 1 year and then 1 year and then 1 year. Like, that's just expected within the industry. We recognize that people are trying to find themselves and find that right culture and that practice fit for themselves, and that's not seen as a detractor. We're going to interview you, we're going to get a good sense of whether or not you're a good person, and we're going to talk to references and get a good sense if you're a good person. So to have that like fear that it's going to look bad on you, that you're jumping from practice to practice, that's not all the case. Maybe if you're like 20 years out and you've been at 20 different practices, then I start to think like maybe something's funky going on. But people just overthink it. I always tell final year vet students when they're looking for jobs is there's no bad decision. Like, if you pick a practice that you end up staying at, wonderful. If you pick a practice that's like the worst first year out that you've ever had with horrendous mentorship and terrible clientele and a toxic work environment, that's actually a good thing too. Like, that is not a bad thing if you look at like the overall grand scheme of things. You recognize where you don't want to be, the type of people you don't want to work with, the type of medicine that you don't want to do. Like, sometimes you need to do the things that you don't really like and be in awful situations for you to appreciate where you want to go. Like, all my experience, like, I think with me having a hard time getting into vet school and my long road doing that, all the experiences that led up to that, I cherish very much. Like, finishing my undergraduate degree, having this university education, and then end up working as a pipeliner, like literal grunt work that required 0% of my brain. No offense, pipeliners out there, you're not listening to podcasts, but like, that made me so appreciative after the fact. Like, I got this education and then I had this horribly difficult job as a pipeliner, 7 days a week, horrendous hours, just the work, like just physical labor to the point where I was like almost walking on my knees because my feet were so sore. Like, it was hard, but it certainly taught me those lessons. And people are in a rush. They're always in a rush, and I was certainly guilty of that. Like, when I came out of high school, I couldn't wait to get into university, and when I was in university, I couldn't wait into vet school, and when I was in vet school, I couldn't wait to be practicing veterinarian, and when I was a practicing veterinarian, I couldn't wait to be a practice owner, and once I was a practice owner, I couldn't wait to be a multiple practice owner. Like, I'm the worst. But people need to breathe. Like, there is no rush.
Now for a tip from the top in the business world of veterinary practice. Many years ago, I remember visiting a very successful and very busy practice in the United States. I had an opportunity to spend some time with the practice owner, and over a long, leisurely and most enjoyable lunch, he told me that the practice doors were locked for clients except for emergencies for 2 hours every Wednesday afternoon. During that time, every member of the practice team was required to attend a practice meeting in which the sole topic of conversation was how to improve the quality of service for clients. Here's a clip in which Tracy Dowdy talks about the value of weekly staff meetings devoted to client service.
The most important standard of communication to set in your practice is weekly client service meetings. Weekly meetings are a key element in establishing a culture of serving clients and patients. One of the main focuses of this meeting is the client. This may be obvious, but many veterinary hospitals have staff meetings where they do not talk about anything related to client service. Developing your team who desire to thrive in this culture is fundamental to your practice's success. This involves an investment in your team's development as a person and as an animal caregiver. Formal training in veterinary practices is not easily found today and is greatly appreciated by those who receive it. All of the standards I have shared in Module 3 act as a common bond that unites the team within a defined and greatly appreciated set of rules. This investment raises their self-esteem and self-worth as well as their worth to the practice. They will repay this investment many times over by their newly developed skills for serving clients and patients.
Now for my quick business tip for this episode. The trigger for my quick business tip this time is a clip in which Dan Pink interviews Whitney Johnson about leading your team up the learning curve.
Hi everyone, welcome to another Pinkcast. I'm joined today by the inimitable Whitney Johnson. Whitney has been a Wall Street analyst, she's been a venture capitalist, and now she's the author of this great book, Build an A-Team. And she is here with some great advice on when to leave a job. Whitney, what do you got?
Well, the first thing you need to know is that every single person is a learning machine.
Okay.
You want the challenge of trying something new, figuring out how to do it, mastering it, and then starting all over again. You want to learn, leap, and repeat.
Okay.
Now, what I want you to do, visualize an S, because every single person, when they start a job, is on an S curve of learning.
Okay.
Start at the bottom. You don't know what you're doing.
No.
You've got this jumble of pieces. You're trying to put them together. Lots of days you come home, and this usually lasts for 6 months, maybe a year. You're like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating. You feel discouraged. But then you put in the time. You move into this sweet spot. And everything is starting to come together. Those pieces, it's hard, but not too hard. You're feeling competent, confident. Your neurons are firing. And this can last 1 to 3 years. And then you become a master. Should be great.
Right.
But because you know everything, you put all the pieces together, there's no longer some novelty, you start to get bored. And when you get bored, because you're no longer learning, you get disengaged. You can be at the top here for 5, 6 months, maybe a year. You can be at the top or on an individual learning curve for 4 years. But after that, you have to jump to a new curve, because if you don't, you're bored, you're disengaged, and when you're disengaged, what happens?
You perform worse.
You perform worse.
You don't get those performance reviews.
You don't. And so that very thing, you're like, oh, I've just paid my dues, I'm going to stay here. You can't. That plateau becomes a precipice.
You can get disrupted, you can get pushed out.
Exactly. So when you get to the top of your learning curve, what do you need to do?
Might as well jump.
You might as well jump.
Van Halen meets Whitney Johnson, only on the Pinkcast. Thanks for watching.
So what's my quick business tip? Well, it's this. The S curve, which Whitney describes, is common to all sorts of situations, to the development of a business or an individual career. So if you're in a practice or you're beginning to wonder where you're going in your career, work out where you are on the S curve. If you're on the plateau at the top, maybe it's time to be looking for that kickstart, maybe a new job, maybe a new role, or maybe a brand new phase in the development of your practice. Well, that's about it for now. I'm John Sheridan, and this has been another video show from Veterinary Business. See you next time.